Hello and welcome to the skating lesson. I'm Dave Lees.
And I'm Jonathan Byer, Team Blue and Team Red, as we've
Yeah.
established. Terrific.
Yes. Well, welcome to this and that. We are previewing the 2024 World Figure Skating Championships. Jonathan, it's very odd the way that the skating season is structured. And I don't know if it's always been like this. It feels like there's been a longer break between Four Continents and Worlds this year.
Kind of
And
lost momentum somehow, like where everything was building for a while. It seemed like it was just enough time that it almost crashed. So I'm working to
yes,
get like excited about Worlds and trying to almost like pinpoint some things I'm really excited to see to sort of keep that motivation going for myself.
yeah, it felt like Four Continents and Europeans were a little earlier this year than they have been in the past. Perhaps they weren't, or just feels that way. But there's been a strange delta, especially with a lot of skaters not going to Four Continents more and more, and it not being a really contested event. I think it has been odd because Ilia and Shoma didn't go, right? So there's no
Showdown.
showdown, right? They have not had this back and forth over time happening again and again and again. And I think that that's a detriment, right? And we're not seeing, we really haven't seen Kaori that much, or we really haven't seen many of the top skaters. So it it feels like they've almost had like a little bit of a break
Or,
before
for
Worlds.
instance, like we saw Kaori a couple weeks ago at that smaller event, but it's not those, again, those big matchups we're excited to see.
Yeah.
They've been in
Yeah.
isolation almost, so she can get away with a triple double there because she doesn't have to put it all on the line. Yeah.
And it's a problem for a sport because I have to tell you, NCAA gymnastics or NCAA basketball or NBA, right? Usually the playoffs get more and more and more and more exciting. But if you think about it, the playoffs have been pushed back so early, right? That now you have to do well at nationals because you're going to Four Continents right after. And this year they named Four Continents before they even competed at nationals. So it really just killed all of the drama and the momentum of this season. And it's been a little bit odd because, and they named it because they had to go to China and get the visas and everything like that. But it's just like not really working, right? Like it should go theoretically like, oh, do you remember like Meryl Davis won the she won Four Continents in ice dance in 2009, right after they won nationals because Tanith and Ben were not competing that year, and that was the first year that they were out injured. Marilyn and Charlie won their first title. It was considered like a little early, but like whoa. And then they went like a week later and they nailed Four Continents, and it was like,
Solidifying
oh
it. Yeah.
wow. And I feel like did Ashley Wagner do this once? In my mind, I'm thinking right back to years. And it was wow, like this is exciting. And then they went on to Worlds and they had a great finish. They were fourth overall, but really close to a medal. And you think like, oh wow, it starts to like build on excitement, right? Like Tessa and Scott, ooh, are they going to be back for nationals? We've seen them return for competition at Four Continents, and then the showdown being at Worlds. We're not seeing that this year. And it's just there's been a really strange energy the last two seasons without Russia, but just strange things happening at Four Continents, people not competing, people not going, and then nobody talking about what is happening. So it is a little bit odd because it's almost either inherently early in the season now or too late in the season, but there's never a meat of the season
But there's
really.
such a big build up to the Grand Prix final. And then
Mhm.
that is where we see most of the major matchups that we're looking
Mhm.
for. But that happened so long ago that it's almost like a new season begins with the onslaught of nationals and Europeans and Four Continents.
Yeah.
And then that momentum that so many had worked towards for the final doesn't seem to always like lead into Worlds because there's such a
Yeah.
gap. Yeah.
And for you like a Terry, you don't like a Terry. What she did have was competitive athletes, and that those skaters were really wanting to beat each other. And without that Russian competitiveness, it does sometimes feel like some of the skaters are skating to survive and not make mistakes as opposed to being really aggressive and winning. And that's been an odd dynamic over, especially this season.
Yeah, like I think so many of their strategies have been to like play it safe, do what you do, and now with a less deep field, it will go your way. I'm kind of looking for someone to push it and like shake it up a little bit, but we're seeing a lot of people sort of rely on safer choices.
Yes, and the other problem that we're having is that they did raise the age for juniors, right? And that problem is that we are not getting the influx of new skaters that we typically would, and the retirements have been hurting the sport. So, if you think about it, we had all the Russians leave because they were banned. You've had Kaori and Loena, who were like fun outside shots for a bronze before. Kaori did get that bronze right at the Olympics. But then there's been no new blood coming in because Mao and Gia never moved up.
Right.
So everybody's just kind of like hanging out in predictable, steady form. And we're kind of waiting for someone to emerge. Ilia has emerged.
Yeah.
Ilia has been one of the only skaters to really emerge. And for many people, it's like too quick, too technical, not enough artistry. And we're still seeing Shoma, right? Who we really haven't seen this year. And Yuma, who was injured before, but has made a good comeback. We don't know how strong he could be, but because Four Continents was so long ago, we have no way of really gauging it. So,
but again, I
mean, I think
Yuma and his team, because they have been piecing this slowly bit by bit, and it seems to be very thoughtful and working for him. So I do believe he's ready to peak for the season at Worlds.
Yeah. Shoma, we really have no idea what to expect. And I think for Shoma was making a lot of retirement type quotes earlier, and now we just haven't heard from him at all.
I mean, it's been at it a long time.
But usually you'd think that there'd be like a Japanese documentary that would go visit France and visit him, but they're just kind of, skating's just lacking a little bit of momentum right now and a little bit of razzmatazz and star power. And I think Japan, part of the appeal was like Russia is so aggressive and they were always brought like the pure skating and their excitement without the juxtaposition of Russia, Japan doesn't have Yuzuru right now. It just doesn't have quite the same push forward. And I think the other thing is that the rules, but also like the music, because of the rules, has become so dreary and sad that the skaters all sort of read as dreary and sad instead of some of the fun and the
next season 3,000 programs to Billie Eilish's "What Was I Made For."
Yes.
Don't you think? I think, and the minute
it should have been for this year. They could have done it this year. Yeah.
But that would have been too current.
I tried to get Brooke to do it for solo dance. She's doing Carmen.
So, it would have been amazing if she had. I mean, the minute that song came out, and again, I only first knew about Billie Eilish from skating.
Yes.
But the minute I heard "What Was I Made For," which was a very lovely moment in the movie, and it's a great song and all this sort of stuff, but I was like, oh no, this is the exact ballad everyone's going to use.
Yeah.
And
it would be so pretty for skating. Yeah, but of course.
But not next to all other similar ballads. That's the only thing.
Yes.
It doesn't stand out as much as it might seem like it would have in the past.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, like, for those attending in person, like things that could be interesting to finally see from these programs in person versus on television. Like I have become better at spotting speed and ice coverage on television, but of course, because the camera is following it, it is inevitably different. So I'm curious with some of this crop of skaters and some of the programs, who's going to be really fast, who's going to be really slow, who's covering all of the ice, who's barely leaving the middle. That's always like an interesting check-in, I think, as a viewer.
I think it will all be interesting as a viewer for you to be there. I would be watching Jason's practices closely. How are his triple axles doing? How does he look? How is Tracy? Junhwa Cha? We really just haven't seen them in a very long time.
A lot of questions going in. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of questions. How's the US going to do? I actually think that it might be an exciting Worlds, but maybe exciting in the sense of like, oh, is the US going to have enough points to get enough spots? How are we going to do in pairs? How are we going to do in the men's event? How about the women's event for 3 spots for next year? Like, these are all interesting questions. How's Roman Sadovsky going to do?
Because again, Dave, if you told me, like, if we fast forward to this point next week and you were like, guess what? Isabel Levito got a medal at Worlds. I'd be like, oh, wow, good for her. And I would believe you. If you told me she absolutely imploded and we lost a spot and she's way down, I would also believe you. Same with Amber Glenn. She could walk out with the medal. She could walk out on a top 10. There's so much that can happen at this Worlds.
Yeah, but I don't feel like they're Tara and Michelle like trying to bring it against each other. It almost feels like they're walking to the plank and trying to survive as perfectionists. That's kind of the I'm curious to see what happens. Adam Siao Him Fa, it seems like it's his time if he is going to medal.
And again, but it's forever since Europeans. Forever.
I'm sorry?
It's been forever since his European skate. So for those, I'm sure they're all training and they're all going to plan to peak at Worlds, but there's a lot of downtime that you've just sort of missed them enough that you're like, I hope this goes well for them, that he can still ride that momentum.
Yeah, I agree completely. It just has a very odd energy happening. I think dance has been a little bit odd too, especially the situation with Baudry and Sorensen taking some of the air out of this season. Also Marjorie and Zach because they had the concussion. So there just hasn't been this fun climb of...
I could just look this up. Are Marjorie and Zach all out of Worlds?
No, they're going. They're going.
They are.
So, but we haven't seen them, right? So it's just the matchups aren't what they typically would be, and that's
if you were doing like the fluff pieces, it would be hard to pinpoint like the specific rivalries you expect to sort of unfold.
No rivalries. I would focus on like Deanna's personal story, right? Yeah, there are no real rivalries right now.
I mean, dance will be very interesting live. Everyone's going to be, the ice coverage and speed, especially in dance, is just so much more obvious in person for me. That I think that will often tell the tale. When I'm more confused by it, sometimes on television, I think that in-person experience makes it just very clear who the most athletic team is, who the most refined team is.
Now, oddly, even though this year it doesn't feel like Worlds is maybe the most exciting matchups, I do think coming out of Worlds with potential rule changes, the French potentially coming back, Audrey Shin potentially entering pairs, Alyssa Liu coming back, there is some more energy on the horizon. Plus, someone feeling slighted and having that kind of momentum for next season is always fun. And I'm hopeful that it'll start to build a bit more.
It may, with some less excellent performances that may happen, that it lights a fire under them a little bit. Is that sort of?
Yeah, or even two people do well and it's close and someone's annoyed, right? It's very stagnant right now, right? It's a lot of the same people who are competing who've competed for a long time.
Right.
And right, with this rule change, we're not seeing the influx of new blood coming in from the juniors, right? So Mao and Gia haven't entered the seniors to really shake things up. And that's typically when things start to get a little bit more exciting, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there's a Kaori, you know, was not her sharpest at the last competition, but she's not really being pushed in that same way.
She didn't have to be her sharpest in that particular field. And what we've
Mhm.
missed in this lead up, like we're saying, are those star-studded fields where they're big matchups that you want to see who comes out on top. And she did that smaller event and did fine enough to win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we want to watch a competition where like Tara Lipinski wins nationals in Nashville, all of a sudden rides that momentum again, and those two girls are going after it at Worlds, like guns blazing for a gold medal.
Yeah.
And there just isn't that kind of a momentum happening right now in almost any of the disciplines, right? And I think I'm most curious for Ilia Malinin because it's his moment this week. And I'm really curious because his agent, right? Like it's no secret they expect to win the world championships. He's gone into, yes, but he's gone into the last two nationals supposed to be dominating, and didn't perform that well.
Again, like you said, there's not really the major competition there for him to motivate. So if you know you're already going to win by like a huge cushion of points, it may just not rev you up. Like if he goes up against Adam and Shoma and Yuma, where the big players are there and going to be bringing their A game.
Do you think he's improved enough since last year to get it done this year?
I think if he skates clean, they might go with it. I think the judges are really ready to award the other three, though. I think they will.
But do you think? Yeah. Do you think the with Ilia, is he ready to seize the moment?
I mean, remind me how he did at Worlds last year. He skated well.
Worlds was but not his best, right? Okay. He could, but he came out at the beginning of this season so good, right? And even what wasn't doing the quad axel in the very beginning, now it's time for him to put it all together, and really deliver.
And for someone in his position, and it's not to disrespect U.S. Nationals, but U.S. Nationals, which was going to be an easy win for him, kind of regardless, I thought it wasn't the worst idea to use it as like an experiment with all that new content. So I'm also curious where they landed. Like after they tried all of that at Nationals and it was a so-so sort of situation, do they go for all that same material at Worlds? Are they going to pull it back a little bit to ensure the cleanliness? Or do they just have all the enthusiasm in the world and they're like, go for it? I don't know what their plan of attack is.
Yeah, I'll
play it
be
safe
curious.
Or really just pull out all the stops.
And what is Yuma going to do? Can Yuma do the quad flip?
To me, I trust that team more than any other because they have so thoughtfully curated his technical content throughout the season and slowly grown it and not tried to do too much too fast. It looked pretty close at Four Continents. Like I think they're whatever they put out will be the right move.
I think he will put up a strong effort. whether or not Ilia beats that is completely, I think, his call, because it's whether or not he just lands his stuff, right? I mean, at the end of the day, his base value is so ridiculous.
Well, that's the thing.
Okay.
We've gone back when we were doing like those old judging on Patreon, and I sort of in my head thought I might switch a certain placement going in. But when you see some of those base values, there's nothing you can do. Even if you wanted to reward Yuma, there was a mistake and Ilia landed, there's probably no way to make that happen. In my mind, the judges tend to prefer Adam, Shoma, Yuma. But I think if the base value is there and Ilia does it all, they're going to have a hard time denying him that with those numbers.
Ilia has done a lot of shows over the last year, which does help you in certainly your program components and presentation, things like that. So will we see that growth now? Will this growth all be later on? How about the ice dance? The ice dance to me seems like, in terms of politics, you have three teams that are kind of mainstays, right, at the top: the Canadians, the Italians, the Americans. But that British team is just climbing.
Knocking. Yeah.
And I want to know how close they're going to be to the podium this year. Even if they're not on it, how close are they by the end of the free dance?
Well, I don't,
because I think by the
lower than fourth in this event. Do you?
No.
That's where I sort of have them.
What kind of a fourth? Like knocking on the door fourth?
Got it.
Because I don't know that I see the other teams improving that much. This team actually has improved their skating throughout the course of the season. They compete a lot, and they're said to train extremely hard. I imagine that they could start to apply pressure for the podium to the teams above them. That becomes a little bit scarier and game-changing coming out of Worlds as opposed to going in, right? They have a real opportunity to make themselves quite dangerous in the future this week. They're
on their side. And if dance party happens, we know they will definitely benefit.
Yeah, and I think that there's a time in everyone's career where you go from that up-and-comer to knocking on the door, and then you're on the podium, and they're like right at that point where they're just, that win that they had at NHK, they didn't get it done at Europeans this year, but they're really knocking on the door for bigger and better things.
Yeah.
What do you make about
before this sort of incident? Like, there were a couple of moments when I felt the judges were holding them up big time on the Grand Prix.
Yeah. Now, what are you thinking about? I think for Chock and Bates, they need to skate really big this week to either solidify.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're almost solidifying their legacy at home. Like this could be their big moment of their career, because their world title last year was not that huge slam dunk.
Yeah. It's not the clip you want to go back and rewatch. That's for sure.
And they had the opportunity this season. Skate America was phenomenal for them. They need to do that again. And we really haven't seen them. I mean, they were sick at nationals. So this is their moment to do that.
Yeah.
And Piper and Paul will also, be at home, and that's a lot of pressure, and the Italians are so steady. So
right.
What do you think about Deanna?
It's going to be a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a lot of pressure for her. And
it feels like her Gracie Gold in Boston Worlds moment, right? Like the defining week of her career.
I know. And you don't even want to say it because, of course, that's compounding that pressure. But I think it will be interesting to see who steps it up in the moment. I mean, I think
she's 40. She is 40. It is now or never, right? Like you are.
And I think this is the biggest opening she may have, because the Japanese team has been sidelined, and the material wasn't really it when we saw it. I don't know if
they went back to the woman program.
They did go back.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that program was tired before.
I know. And again, just like with Jason, he's doing the beautiful dream, impossible dream rather, um, in a lovely way. And he only competed at 3 events last year, but it's just that inevitable repeat thing that happens. It just loses that extra spark around it. I don't know. I think that I think this could really be it, but I think it's up to her and him. I mean, obviously they have to do it. I mean, that sounds like such an obvious thing to say, but I think it's theirs if they can do it. I think they have worked so hard all year. So those PCS marks keep rising. We're used to seeing them there. The judges are accustomed to seeing them on the podium. This could be it. And quite frankly, I don't know who else could really get in her way aside from the Japanese team, who we know just happens to be very vulnerable.
The Germans, the Georgians. The Georgians haven't looked great in practice, but the Germans for sure. Even the Italians are.
Who has
the Georgians? Yeah, the Georgians didn't look great, but the Italians looked good. I think certainly at Europeans and practice. Who knows? Yeah,
I mean, selfishly, I'm sad not to see Rebecca and Filippo there, because that was the Italian team that had the programs I liked the most. But yeah, there's a lot of what ifs that can happen there.
Are you thinking Kaori? For the women, are you going Kaori or Luna? Who do you think is going to take it?
I mean, the thing I will say is Kaori seems to know how to peak at Worlds. She, just like the previous season, showed vulnerabilities, but then was sort of able to figure it all out and sort it out by Worlds. I was fascinated that she did that smaller event just a couple weeks ago. And it looked strong, but not perfect, but she shouldn't have been perfect there either. We'll see. I just miss her collaborating with Roheen. That's what I miss this year. I miss
Luna wants it. That's what I will say. In her defense, she really wants it. But are her jumps clean enough? I don't know.
But she is emitting more of a fighter energy than sometimes she has in the past. So it could be downright interesting. It's that bronze medal. I'm assuming we're going to have some sort of combination of Luna, Kaori on the top 2 spots, but I think bronze is wide open.
I could see an American getting bronze. I could also see Americans being like 10th and 11th. Right? This is.
Yeah, I think it could literally go one of a million ways with this group. Who knows what Nina from Belgium is going to pull out? She could surprise us. Not that I necessarily see that happening, but as I just look at this list, Monochiba, Hana Yoshida, whose material I like. The Korean women are a big question mark for me.
Yeah, and they're really
high highs and low lows throughout the season.
They're struggling without Yelim. She had such a hard season and unexpectedly and not present.
And hey, and question mark. Young Yu randomly seemed to sort of be riding the ship after it started rocky at the beginning of this season. So a lot of questions.
Yeah,
what would be exciting about this Worlds is how undetermined all of it is. Usually you can kind of make a guess, but I think kind of across the board here, you could just throw up the names and see where they fall, and I would believe you that that's how that's going to go.
I think it'll be a good watch in the free skates. I have a feeling that the free skates will be good because it is uneven, but going in, it doesn't feel super exciting, but maybe it'll be interesting because it could go in
probably in unexpected ways.
Yeah.
And some people that can't step it up in the moment, and some people that just go bursting through that door. That's what I'm hoping for. Whether it be someone I already know and love or somewhat of a surprise, that someone just makes it their moment and walks through an open door of opportunity, which hopefully someone does.
Right, we will see you guys back after the World Figure Skating Championships. My God.